It's a great, great honor to hold the space for Joe Wolfe. He was such a dear and wonderful person. And when Tina called and asked us to host a conversation on his behalf, I just thought, like, gosh, Joe, what do you want me to say? And he was good friends with Neil Diamond Walsh, who wrote the book Conversations with God, which was a great book. And one of our mutual friends said, Maureen, if you want to talk to Joe, you can do it just like you talk to God. You know, just sit down and ask Joe, what do you want? And you too can do that. You have a direct line to your loved ones. So, you know, what I got from Joe was that he really was grateful that you guys were coming together as a family here, and that that we have this beautiful space to be in. But that also he wanted me to know, which you already know, that his ministry was his breath. You know, that it was his breath, you know, it was his life. So I got to look at some emails that the correspondence that Joe and I had over the years when we became friends here in Chicago. And we became friends right from the first meeting. We had coffee and we just didn't stop talking. And it was funny because, like, he was like, you know, I was this ex-actress from Hollywood and he was this ex-convict, you know? And I was the rougher of the two. You know, he would kind of shake his head at me and kind of, he gave me a lot of good counsel. I was like the hot-headed, you know, had my feathers ruffled more times than not, and he would just be like this mellow, you know, pipe-smoking dude, and he would give me advice. And in our emails, I noticed that was kind of a theme. And he sent me this poem from Mother Teresa. I wanted to read it. He said, the poem says, "People are often unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people may accuse you of selfishness or alternative motives, but be kind anyway. If you're successful, you'll win false friends and true enemies, but succeed anyway. If you're honest and frank, people may cheat you, but be honest and frank anyway. What you spend your years building, someone could destroy overnight, but build anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, they may be jealous, but be happy anyway. The good you do today, people will often forget tomorrow, but do good anyway. Give the world the best you have, and it might not even be enough, but give the world the best you have anyway. You see, in the end, the final analysis is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway." It was such a great poem, you know, and that kind of summed up these words from Joe, because he lived like that. He knew how to love simply and to simply love. He did that so well. He had an unconflicted way of being, even though on paper he seemed pretty conflicted. I mean, not how many people can say that they were a mystic and a convict. You know, he had a very varied life. And he allowed that life to be used for the higher good of all. He had a golden heart, he had an easy smile, and he loved, loved, loved people. And he had, more than anyone I ever met, he had great, great compassion. You know, he donated his life and his everything he had to the betterment of humanity. Like, he gave compassion and had great compassion for the human experience. And it's no wonder that in one of his mystical experiences, I don't know if you guys, most of you know here, that he had these mystical experiences, and one of them was that he had a visitation from Kuan Yin, who is known as, you know, the deity of compassion. And this was a very vital and powerful experience that he had. Kuan Yin is a goddess of compassion, and she is a goddess that comforts the troubled, the sick, the lost, the senile, the unfortunate, and the forgotten. So it's no wonder that she revealed herself to Joe, who is also known for comforting the troubled, the sick, the lost, the senile, the unfortunate, and the forgotten. But Joe did not let the forgotten remain forgotten. He would start off all of his workshops with this prayer from A Course in Miracles, which was, you know, his backbone. I like to say it's my spiritual backbone, but it really was his spiritual backbone. And the prayer that he would start off all the workshops before we even began, he would do the poem from A Course in Miracles, which says, "I'm here only to be truly helpful. I'm here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do, because him who sent me will direct me. I'm content to be wherever he wishes me to be, knowing that he goes there with me, and I will be healed as he teaches me to heal." And Joe lived that, you know? That's how he lived his life. He dedicated everything he did it with love, you know, and he spent every breath and every cent he had on his ministry, you know. And I remember I told this story a couple weeks ago that I went to his house one time. It was above Warsaw. He had this little apartment, and I walked in and I said, Joe, you got out of prison. Like, why are you still living like this? You can ask more of your God. And he was like, this is beautiful. And I thought, yeah, he's the richer of the two of us, you know. I'm seeing where it's not working, and he saw how everything was working and how everything was beautiful. I mean, imagine moving through life with that kind of perception. So, you know, he wrote books and letters not for recognition, not to get on the top 10 list. He wrote books and letters so that he could be of service to those men and women, that he could be an extension of love to those people that we perceive as forgotten. And he would go the extra mile. Every single time he would go the extra mile. He would talk, all of us, if you were a friend of his, he would talk you into going the extra mile too. And sometimes we would begrudgingly go with him. I once drove 5 hours for a 2-hour workshop, and then 5 hours back again. And he sat in the passenger seat smoking his pipe the whole time. Put on the Bee Gees. Put on Rod Stewart. Oh, I love this song. And, you know, he would regale me with his stories, you know, and we all heard his great stories. He was a great storyteller. He told stories at Voice Box with us. He was an author, he was a speaker, and he was a founder. He was the founder of Spirit Light Outreach, this beautiful ministry that, you know, as much as he loved each and every single one of us, he loved that ministry. That was his true and first love, because it was all about books for him. And I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you have had this experience with books, you know, that books can be such amazing tools to help us to live in a broader way, you know. They're like the ability to educate, to enlighten, to help. I mean, there's probably a book that you read once that made you change the whole way that you looked at things. You know, whether that's the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita or, you know, the Big Blue Book of AA, or maybe it's A Course in Miracles or the Four Agreements. But Joe knew that though he couldn't physically get into the prison, he could bring consciousness through books, you know, and so that's how he did it. It was all about the books. They're like a rabbit hole that you could go down. And as important as these life-changing and lifelines have been for us in our own life, the books that we think about, as these are especially powerful for men and women who are incarcerated. You know, through the pages of these books, he lit the fires in the heart of these men and women. They say, you know, that if you think you only have one life to live, you must not know how to read a book. And I think that, you know, these people who were serving life, Joe extended life to them through these books. And he did it because, you know, he had the experience of being incarcerated, and somebody came up to him and said, you got to read this book. And that first book that he was given was Ram Dass, Be Here Now. So from that moment, he was voracious with his spirituality, and he would be the first to tell you that he kind of went like this with it, but towards the end it was a straight up. And he shared his personal experiences with these men and women in and out of prison. You know, some of us are just in the prison of our minds, which he was notorious for saying. And he would share these generous stories, his life in the orphanage, his life in the juvie hall or in the reform schools, as his stepmother from hell, as he liked to call her. And I used to say to him, like, Joe, you got to stop telling your people that you had a stepmother from hell, you know? And then I realized, you know, that it was the specifics of his story that helped other people, because a lot of people happen to have a stepmother from hell. It doesn't mean we can't transform them. I had one, and then I found out I was in love with her, so it just took a little while. But so that's important to notice that, you know, we are all human beings having a human experience, but our stories can help other people to rise above it. So his journey to enlightenment and to being this way shower wasn't an easy journey, you know. He was, as he liked to say, he was hit in the head a few times with a cosmic 2x4. And he had a series of subtle and not so subtle love taps from God, he liked to call them. He got knocked down. That man got knocked down many, many, many times. But that's not the most important thing about him, and it never was. The most important thing is that he kept getting back up. You know, he kept getting back up, and he kept getting back up, and he kept getting back up. So that's how he was able to glean that great compassion that he had for his fellow man. You know, I think of these times that we get knocked down, Those are the tenderization of our spirit, of our soul. Those are the things that help us to have this compassion. Joe's life and suffering did not always make sense, but he made a meaning of his life by recognizing that the work he did for others was worthy, was important, and was significant. He could get stacks and stacks of letters from men and women who were requesting books and expressing thanks. And he didn't always know how he was going to get it done, but he did what he could one day at a time, He held the light for others because he knew that he had been in that dark hour. He knew that these books had helped him. There's a writer, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And, Viktor Frankl says that what gives light must endure burning, So it's that fire in the belly that we're also talking about today. The community's been going through a series of talks on the chakras, and today is the fire in the belly. So it's that fire in the belly that you think has burned you that actually it informs you on where to go, what to do, and what to say. So he had that fire in the belly. He had that ability to dare to reach past the dark hour of his soul and reach right back into it and be available for someone else to pull them out of their own darkness. I mean, that's a mighty worthy use of a life, if you ask me. We all have these crucifixions in our life, but we can take those crucifixions and cause them to be catalysts. And that's what he did. He took those places that he felt crucified and he turned them into catalysts. Spirit Light Outreach was what that was all about. Joe courageously reached back into the dark of these cells and he brought light. And he brought both passion and fire in the belly for his work. And for the so I want to talk a little bit about how we can ignite that own fire in the belly, because why else would we be here this morning on this amazing day, if not just to celebrate his life, but to glean how we can continue to carry the possibility for ourselves, for others in the same way. So when we talk about that fire in the belly, sometimes it's hard for us to cultivate or to activate that inner light. But it comes to us from having a bigger why, and Joe had a bigger why. He knew what that was. Pam, this weekend, she had a big why when she moved into cultivating this beautiful art show for the community. This weekend we gathered together for Pam Peterson's vision, and the bigger why was, to help people see that they can get healing through the creative arts, And that's something that we said, yeah, let's get fired up about that. As a practitioner, as a spiritual practitioner, when I first went to school to learn how to be a caregiver for spiritual, in a spiritual way, they would teach us a 5-step prayer. But the 5-step prayer wasn't important. It was important, but it wasn't as important as the fire in the belly. It wasn't about the fluidity or the articulation of your word. It was about the fire in the belly, the degree of faith that you had. Faith trumps fear every single time. And we're asked to strengthen that faith and that fire. And our prayers would only be as profitable as our conviction in the word. So Joe was convicted to what he was doing. The solar plexus is all about that. It's about who you are. It's about where you're going. It's about what you stand for. And never doubt, that a small group of people, of thoughtful people, committed citizens can change the world, because as Margaret Mead said, indeed, that's the only time it ever is changed, is when a group of people join together with that inner knowing, that inner self-worth, that inner self-trust. That self that we're talking about isn't the small s, isn't the selfish s, it's the big S, it's the spiritual S. So it's what I like to call allowing yourself to be a hot knife through butter. To really get to who you're here to be, to really wake up from the dull dream and activate, your purpose. I know Joe's son is going to take on this ministry. That's no small thing, You got to have a hot knife through butter attitude when it comes to that, because it's not easy, but you have a community that's going to support you. But as you stay true to the big why, the resources to support that will come with it as well. So there's some ways that we can activate that inner, light. And a couple of them are actually to participate in competitive and like physical sports. Like that gets your fire up in a fun way, if you can have good sports for fun. Set goals and step toward it. Even if they're little baby steps, keep working towards it. Use affirmations such as, I got this, affirmations such as, I'm capable. And if you use them for yourself, same to your brother too. You got this. You're capable. You could say, I'm passionate about my dreams and desires. I'm vital, visible, and valued. I'm joyful, confident, and capable. Or from the Course in Miracles, the words that we use are, there is nothing that my holiness cannot do. You know, that's literally saying the big S spiritual self within me is going to move mountains, and all I have to do is know where to go, what to do, and what to say, to rely on that inner voice, to cultivate that inner voice, so that you don't do it on your own. If you do it on your own, you will become very drained. So, that's the idea of getting to the fire in the belly, trusting your gut. And trusting your gut can be a total game changer. It most time makes no sense at all. People will go, what do you mean you trust your gut? You're going to go on that? Yeah, gut instincts explain a lot. The more you trust your gut, you know, the more mysterious, miraculous, and mind-blowing your life will be, because it's not just your gut, it's your God. It's your God voice that lives in your gut. You know, the question that comes up often is, how do I know that this is my intuition, or how do I know maybe it's fear? It's a great question. This inner voice that dwells within each of you, it will lead you to a feeling, if it's in love, it will lead you to a feeling of expansion. You'll feel bright and vibrant. If it's in fear, you'll feel small and stagnant. Let me tell you something, one thing I know about God, it's not small and stagnant. It's not scared or it doesn't step backwards. God in love steps forward. And you can activate that power within you by recognizing that kind of God. I was going to tell you something that you might not like to hear, so I'm going to skip it. I'll tell you next week. But I will say, if you feel unsure about a decision, if you feel unsure, just say, you know, does this make me feel tight or small, or does this make me feel possible and powerful? Your intuition is your God voice. Another way to trust your intuition is to simply ask, and this is a great question to ask, is this really something that would serve the whole for the highest good, or is this ego-driven? Because, and Joe asked that question all of the time. Is this ego-driven, or is this for the whole and the whole good? The ego will lead you to take actions that serve you temporarily. And on the other hand, your intuition, your higher vision will take you to places that will serve everyone always. So that's how you know Joe's ministry was great, because his ministry is still serving people. So these are, I'm just going to give you some tips on how to activate it, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tina, who's going to tell us about her dad. So these are some tools to activate that inner fire. Number one, take a leadership role in your life. I know that sounds scary for a lot of us, and some people say, I'm not a leader. I don't know where to go, what to do, and what to say. If you follow that advice, you'll be able to stand up, be visible, and valuable to your community. So take a leadership role. Joe allowed himself to take a leadership role, and he took that role seriously. One time, and he was a great leader. One time he got me on this radio show, and he said to me the whole time, oh, it's a big show, it's a big show. So many people listen in, and da-da-da-da. And I was like, it's fine. I've done this before. I've talked in front of a lot of people. But the more he talked, the more I was like, oh no. And then he did this funny thing right before because he was helping me out, and he was going to, you know, hook up the technology for it. He goes, I'm going to hit press, and then you're going to be live, so just know that. And right before we went live, he goes, oh, don't curse. And I was like, ah! It was the worst hour of my life. But take a leadership role and come as you are, you know? You know, if you're a cursor like me, if you're rough or rugged, don't worry. God will use you the way you are. You don't have to polish yourself up. Express yourself. Another way to activate the fire in the belly. Express your stories, your dances. Write something. Create something. That's how you bring that fire up. Take risks. Try something new. Don't always go to the same places and do the same thing. Strike up a conversation with a stranger. You know, that expands your capacity for knowing compassion for humanity. Spend time also on your own. Don't be afraid of the silence. Don't be afraid of being just with your God. You know, it's a beautiful thing to give yourself. And practice being, as Joe's first book was, just being right here and right now. This is a very beautiful place to be. So practice anchoring into that. You are here. You are all here right now. Whether you're here because you came for the chakra series, or whether you came to celebrate Joe's life, or whether you're here because you're my kids and you don't have any choice. You're here, right now. And you get to choose what you want to do from this moment forward, you know? Let this be the time that you engage and create, instead of get small and water down your truth. There's one quote I want to leave you with which says, I am only one, but I am one. And I cannot do everything. But I can do the something that I will, and I can do something, and I will not let what I cannot do interfere with what I can do. Hitler was one person, caused a lot of damage. Mother Teresa was one person, caused a lot of love. Joe Wolfe was one person. Pam Peterson was one person. You're one person. You can cause a lot of love in the world. You can do great things. And now's the time to ignite that recognition within you. Don't let these words be in vain today. Catch the inspiration of the Spirit that's speaking in you, and let that fears and worries be burned away so that all that's left is what is really good and beautiful and holy about you. Joe left us with this beautiful light, this snail trail of love to the sun. He was good and beautiful and holy. That's how he'll be remembered. Let us remember you that way as well. That's the word.
I am honored to be here to speak to you about my dad, Joe Wolfe. Most of you here had your own relationship here with my dad. Each of you has your own set of memories and your own word picture that describes this man. I don't presume to know the man that you all knew, but I hope that in this speech that I offer, you will recognize some part of the man that we all knew. It is an odd thing speaking at the memorial of a man that has served as the narrator of most of my life. In the hours and the days since his death, I feel as if I've lost my words. I suppose it is because he was the person that provided me with so many of them. So many times over the past couple weeks as we've struggled or hurt, I've thought I should call Dad. He'd help me see this all the right way. He was good at that, helping me see things right side up. When I was 8, I remember my dad and I standing outside of our apartment on Washington in Chicago. Things were hard financially for my family at the time, and he didn't want my mom to be the one to break the news to me that there weren't going to be many presents that year for Christmas. He put his arms around me and said, "Keiki," that was my nickname, Keiki, "I have something to tell you about Santa Claus." I don't remember being disappointed at all. He told me in a way that made me excited to want to give him any presents that he could afford to my siblings. The following year, he and my mom separated, and although we didn't see him for a while after he left, he would call and say, "I may not be here next to you, but I'm always with you." And he was. Joey Kelly and I, we each had our own different relationship with Dad. To me, he was always the first man I ever loved. And although he may have made some mistakes along the way, he would always be there. If I was having a hard time in life, Dad always had a story about something similar he experienced that would put my problems in perspective. When I was battling addiction and fighting off my demons, Dad was there to listen to me and to give advice through his stories. Since the day of my dad's passing, I keep reliving those mornings with my dad when I was just a toddler. Him getting ready to leave for work, and me sitting on his shoe and holding onto his pant leg for dear life. "Please don't go, Dad." And as much as I wish he could be here to put his hand on my face, hug me, and tell me that everything is going to be all right, I know that he is still here with us, and that one day we will all be together again. There is no disease or accident or course in this little thing we call life that can do a darn thing to change that beautiful soul-saving truth. This separation is a matter of temporary circumstance. My dad still exists, and as he goes about the Lord's errands, I know that when we need him, he'll be there. In May, Phil and I got to spend a lot of time with my dad in Florida, and I'm so grateful for that. Many of you that knew my dad well knew that he didn't always visit for long. We had our short yet sweet visits. In Florida, we spent 2 whole days together. He showed us his home, his beloved Starbucks, the gazebo where he would sip his coffee and watch the sunrise every morning. He even retold the story of him being healed by an angel when he was in the orphanage. I love listening to his stories. I'm so grateful for the time that I got to spend with my dad, and I will hold those memories close to my heart forever. I do not want my loved ones to remember my dad for the mistakes that he made or for the wrongdoings of his past. I want my family and friends and all of you to remember how he overcame those demons, how he changed his life for the better and became a servant of God. This is how I will always remember my dad. Joe Wolfe was a man who touched many lives. He was passionate about his work and about helping other individuals get on the right spiritual path. I will always remember my dad as the man who loved my mother with all of his heart, no matter what, even if she yelled at him. He loved her more than anything in this world. I remember my dad as a grandfather who loved and adored his grandchildren. For the first time holding his granddaughter, Alyssa looked at her and said she was special because she has in her mother's eyes. I will remember my dad as a storyteller because through his stories is how he taught us life lessons. I will remember my dad as a servant of God who through his own experiences and hardships found his life's purpose by helping others with similar life experiences. And I will always remember my dad as the first man I fell in love with, and the man that continued to amaze me throughout our time together. I'm so proud of him. So today, with my heart crying, holding on tight, and protesting against his early farewell, I am learning from my dad. This parting is not forever. This is not goodbye. I love you, Dad. I'd like to close my speech with a prayer that my dad wrote in one of his books called A Prayer for All Solutions. I know some of you know it. Dear God, I love you. You created me. I live in you and you in me. Only my own limited, unconscious guilt and belief in this ego, this false personality's individual identity keeps me confused. Thank you for everything you give me. Grant me the power to live in your presence and to accept your unconditional love as I learn to forgive. Allow me to remember that you are with me always, with every breath I take, in every movement, in all thoughts, actions, and feelings. Remind me many times during the day until every second becomes another moment spent living in your loving embrace and constant presence. Allow me to be a servant of your will, a vehicle of divine love, and a channel of God's will. Give me direction and divine assistance as I surrender all personal will to the devotion to you. Allow me to help to dedicate my life to the service of God. Grant me the ability to choose love and peace above all options while I commit to the goal of unconditional love and compassion for all life and all of its expressions as I surrender all judgment to you, God. Make me aware that the world of my ego is a constant and tenacious tendency to react, to feel bad, guilty, mad, defeated, bored, scared, inferior, embarrassed, annoyed, lonely, or superior and condescending. All these give validity to judgment regardless of the form, and by reacting with judgment, I feed and strengthen the ego's world and reinforce the seeming reality of a separation from you. Please remind me constantly to view all others as my brothers, to realize that we are all one, to forgive them for who they are, one with me, joined in one mind and also innocently caught in the ego's identification with the world of illusion. Never let me forget that I am not this temporary body, but pure spirit, created in your likeness. As I continue to live every moment in the knowledge that you are with me always, where I am, you, God, the Alpha and Omega, the all and everything, the absolute. Thank you.
So what do you think? I would love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, or you can go ahead and sign up for our newsletter at speakeasyspiritualcommunity.com so we can keep the conversation going. Because Speakeasy is all about engaging in engaging conversations. Everything is better when we all share our voice. I'm Maureen Muldoon, your spiritual vixen, reminding you to love more and fear less, and don't forget to laugh. What do you say?